Hey people of this beautiful world, welcome back to Angelic Embrace, where we document and narrate the glorious and life-changing near-death experiences sent in by you guys. It is greatly appreciated. So sit back, relax, know that you are loved, and let's get into today's near-death experience story. Consider subscribing and watching to the end to find out what happens. My first encounter took place in Venezuela on the 9th of August in the year 1987. It was a Sunday. Two amazing things took place to me on that day. First, since I had a handicraft company, I received a number of requests, and Sundays were traditionally the day that I would fulfill those requests or create items to sell, in addition to painting some other pieces and doing the laundry. As a result of my husband taking the children to the park to ride bicycles and then taking them to my mother-in-law, he will be arriving home later than usual. After completing my job for the day, I walked to the kitchen area, where I discovered, much to my astonishment, that my husband had forgotten the tools that were on the kitchen counter. Today infuriated me, and I yelled out in a loud voice, "Damn it, this would be the day that my husband would not leave everything in their place." When I went to pick them up, I suddenly heard a voice that said, "That's it, put everything in its place." I immediately stopped what I was doing and paid attention to what the voice said. When I turned to face the kitchen door, I am greeted by a guy who is staring at me and grinning. He is wearing a white tunic and a golden strap around his waist. He had hair that was wavy and nearly reached down to his shoulders. It did not in the least bit terrify me. After some time, he disappeared. I took the tools, put them in the box, and then stored the box and the tools in the closet that was designated for them immediately below the staircase and in front of the kitchen. After I had finished putting the tools away and had locked the door, it suddenly occurred to me that I was all by myself in the house. I thought to myself, my God, if they left the door opened and anybody got in. I immediately hurried to the kitchen and grabbed a knife to protect myself in the event that I was attacked by someone. I sprinted to the front door, locked it, then went to the garage door, closed it, and last went to the patio door, shut it. After that, I began to search all of the rooms, closets, and restrooms on the ground level. After that, I walked to the bedrooms on the second floor and repeated the same there. I also double-checked the chest of drawers and the doors to the closets, walked to the part of the terrace that leads to the patio, and made sure that all of the windows and access doors were shut. It came down to only my bedroom. As soon as I arrived, I was overcome with an unexplainable sense of unease. At that same moment, I recalled that the entity that was standing at the door seemed to be leaning as if on one foot, and I realized that I did not see any feet. The very act of writing this causes shivers to go down my spine as I recall how quickly I ran around the house examining everything. I suddenly became aware that the figure before me was Jesus of Nazareth as I watched it float in place without making any movement. He appeared to us just as they have described him, except the scars and the thorny crown, of course. This put me at ease. As I entered the room, I thought to myself, it's probably best if I just remain over here and get this over with. I grabbed the remote control, switched on the television, began flipping through the channels, and then decided to watch a movie. I was so terrified that I didn't even want to take a shower out of respect for the people who could be in the house, so I put it off until my husband got home. After laying in bed watching television for about an hour and a half, I became aware that my husband had come. I thought to myself, good, they have here, and continued to watch television while lying in bed. At that very time, I saw a huge light that was moving closer and closer to the window of my bedroom. "We are coming, looking for you," the voice of a lady with an authoritative tone informs me. "We are coming." At that same time, my husband was escorting our children to their own bedrooms before making his way to join me and my wife in ours. In the split second before he reached the door to the bedroom, I found myself outside of my body and attempting to return to it, but I was unable. I could feel the light ball approaching my room via the window while I was viewing myself and felt the weight of my body, which prevented me from moving. The light ball was nearly inside my room. I sprinted in the direction of my spouse. That did not in any way open the door, and by that time I was already standing next to him in the hallway. He did not see me. When I tried to talk to him, he did not pay attention to what I had to say. I hurried once more to find my body, and when I got there, I found that I was unable to move. But even though I was frozen solid like a popsicle, I still had a lot of heat in me. The door was afterwards opened by my spouse. The light was still on, and despite my attempts to communicate with him, he did not assist me in any way. He lowered himself to my level and began to examine me. After that, he rose to his feet and proceeded to the kitchen. I remained there, struggling to move my body but being unable to do so. I emerged from my body once again and rushed down to the basement, where the kitchen was, since I knew my husband would be there. Oh, surprise! No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't go down the staircase. It was impossible. Nothing, I hurried back to the bedroom, and the light was still there. However, it had moved closer to the window and was nearly entering the room, making it an even more breathtaking sight. After that, I got the impression that the housekeeper had come, and she was accompanied by her sleeping daughter. I tried to get her attention by calling her, but she ignored my attempts. She came over to be at my side, but she did not notice me being there. I raced into my daughter's room and began to speak to her while also petting her, but she did not hear me. She did not even notice that I was there. I gently stroked her hair and gave her a passionate kiss, and while she moved slightly, she did not become awake. I rushed once more in an effort to get to the kitchen, but it was to no use. I was unable to descend. I raced into my son's room, but he had already fallen asleep and did not hear me. The strange thing was that I never unlocked any of the doors. I had no idea how I was able to go inside. I tried to get the maid's attention by running to her room, but she didn't hear me, so I hit her and told her, "It seems like they want to kidnap me. Assist me." However, she did not respond in any way. I exited her chamber and hurried once again to the kitchen, but it was to no use. I was unable to descend the stairs. After that, I went and glanced at my body before getting into it, but there was nothing there. I was conscious, but I was unable to move, and I became utterly immobile. I exited the building once again, walked to the top of the staircase, crouched down, and peered through the hole in the wall. From that point on the staircase, the only thing you could see was the entrance to the kitchen. I looked over and noticed that my husband was drinking milk out of a full glass and snacking on crackers topped with cheese and ham. I yelled at him to put down his food, come here, and assist me, but it was to no use. He did not hear me. I came to the conclusion that the only person who could assist me was myself. Therefore, I made the decision to return to my body. When I entered my body, the heat was quite great, and at the same time, I felt as if I had taken on too much weight. Because of how heavy the bed was, I had the impression that it was going to tip over and land on the floor below. After then, there was a gradual dimming of the light, and at that point my spouse entered the room. When he got near to the bed and began watching me, I begged him to help me, but he did not hear me. He got close to the bed and started watching me. After that, he gets on his knees and resumes his examination of me. I continued to beat him in the face. He did not see me, hear me, or feel my strikes. The only response he gave was a little movement of his head. I began to repeat the Lord's Prayer, and all of a sudden, I had the impression that I was saying it aloud and starting right where it reads our daily bread. I went back to my normal life, but I was still freezing, and all of a sudden I felt a strong hit and a strong sound, like when a large machine gets stuck all of a sudden, something like track, 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 and it was coming out of my heart. When I opened my eyes, I told my husband, "Well, my man, you are crazy. They are attempting to carry me away through the window. Instead of assisting me, you were simply eating and did not assist me." After that, you told him, "I am really hot. Go with me to the restroom. I do not want to be alone." When he touched me, he saw that I had been sweating heavily and that I was quite chilly. He then said to me, "Drink this water," as he handed it to me. He was prepared and had brought a cup of water with him. I was still in bed, and I felt like I had a lot of weight on me. After I had finished drinking it, I poured it over my head and then got into the shower. I was afraid that if I went to sleep, they would wake me up and take me away. I did not move from my seat the whole night. My second encounter took place in Miami, Florida, where I now reside. It was the night of November 12, 2011, around 9 o'clock, and I was working on and reading email at the time. I got up and informed my husband that it was good night, that I was going to sleep, and that I was bored. His response was, "Why at this time? It is not even morning yet. I often go to sleep at about midnight or a little bit later." "No, good night, I am bored," she said, and then she walked into the bedroom. I got into my usual posture, which was lying down with my face up, and I dozed off to sleep. When I awoke, I had no idea how long I had been sleeping when I suddenly found myself in the middle of the Third World War. The normal weapons I was used to seeing were nowhere to be seen, and the destruction I saw was horrifying. Dead bodies everywhere, wrecked roads, houses, children, and animals. The armaments I saw were entirely unique and uncommon. In addition to the trees that were chopped down, the water was also tainted. I passed away because the world had reached an appalling state. After that, I returned to my physical form and said to myself, I have to go back and see more. Again, I found myself outside of my body, and this time I saw a great number of people injured, many people in sadness, and a great deal of destruction. Suddenly, I found myself in my body and began to get the sensation that all of the teeth in my lower jaw had been extracted, which was accompanied by a great deal of discomfort. After then, it seemed as if someone was pulling my neck toward my shoulders with ropes, and there was a lot of discomfort between both of my shoulders. At the same moment, I had the sensation that someone was pulling a belt over my shoulders and all the way down to where my nipples begin. I was unable to move because I had become rigid. After then, it dawned on me that my spouse had been in the bedroom the whole time. I attempted to move, but I was unable to. I emerged from my physical form once again. I soared at an extraordinary speed and tremendous speed, and I found myself standing in front of God. I tried to explain to him that I still have a lot of things to do, but boom. Within a thousandth of a second, I was back in control of my body. I was no longer in any agony, but instead felt an overwhelming sense of tranquility. Nonetheless, I was unable to move. I went back to God, who is pure energy, and I told him that I am alive, but that I am unable to move or bang. I went back right away, and when I did, I felt the belt squeezing me more tightly, but I didn't have any pain. Instead, I started to get the sensation that someone was inserting a chip roughly the size of a foot into my right forearm, and then that chip was going through my chest and coming out of my left forearm. This chip was made of a transparent substance and included a large number of tiny transparent dots. During the procedure in which they implanted the chip in my forearm, I had the sensation that energy was being transmitted into my body. It was like when seismographs detect and record an earthquake. The lines were very close to one another on a white sheet of paper that was the size of a legal sheet of paper, and it was moving around me. At the same time, I could feel the noise of a large turbine, which was similar to the sound of whoosh. I was able to function normally, and eventually I regained movement in the little finger on my right hand. I continued to feel icy and rigid. When I touched my husband, he quickly leaped out of bed, fearing that a lizard had somehow made its way into the bed with him. When I turned on the light, I yelled at him to call the ambulance, clenching my teeth the whole time. When he heard me, he immediately dialed 911. I struggled to get out of bed but eventually did so. Walking to the living room made me appear like a mechanical being. I informed him that I did not experience any pain, but that my whole body was stiff, and I said so while clenching my teeth once again. I instructed him to tell them a heart attack, and he followed my instructions. I was experiencing less anxiety by the time the ambulance came, but I still had the impression that I was not myself. They inquired as to who, and I responded by saying, me, while gritting my teeth in response. They asked me whether I was in pain, and although I said that I was not, I did feel rigid inside, as well as incredibly chilly, despite the fact that I was not really cold. They checked all of my vital signs, and to everyone's surprise, everything was normal. After that, they asked me how I was feeling, and I said that I was okay but that I did not feel like myself at all. They inquired as to whether or not I would be able to walk to the ambulance, and I responded in the affirmative. I reasoned that if I declined their request, they may take even more time, and I couldn't afford to lose any more time since there were 2 vehicles that needed to be moved in order to make room for the ambulance to come back up, and then I would have to wait for them to bring the gurney down. I got down the 3 stairs as quickly as I could and then took 6 steps in the direction of the ambulance. Once I arrived at the location, they instructed me to lie down, which I did with a great deal of caution. I did not loosen up at all. My right hand was being pinched and injected by one of the paramedics as I instructed another paramedic to put the clamp on my left hand to determine the level of oxygen in my blood. After that, I turned to the paramedic and informed her that I was beginning to feel the pinching on my right hand due to the fact that she was unable to locate the vein. Donating blood is something I do often, but this time they took a while to find my vein. It was the 6th time that she had squeezed me. The individual to my left inquired as to whether or not I had an allergy to aspirin, and I responded in the affirmative. The person to my right informed me that they were providing me with 3 children's aspirins. Take them with this, and he handed me a little glass. After I gave them to them, they questioned whether or not I was currently taking any medications. I mentioned that the radiation tablet that had been used to eliminate my thyroid gland had resulted in my not having a thyroid gland. I had the sensation that something wanted to get out of me, and then I vomited up a substance that was either very dark or a really powerful shade of wine. It seemed to be a liver-containing amount of gelatin. I hurled to the left of the emergency medical technician. At that same moment, my soul got out of the ambulance, sat down, and began to soar higher and higher into the sky. I overheard someone telling another person to take off the pantyhose. When I turned around, I saw my body on the gurney inside the ambulance, along with another ambulance behind this one, and further in the distance, my husband driving my car. I tried to hang on to it, but then I found myself inside of a massive dome that was a light salmon color. I was looking far away from a beautiful city. When I turned around, I saw my body. This made no difference to me. All I cared about was getting to the enchanting city where I was going as quickly as possible. Then I became aware that a large number of people were shouting my name, but all I wanted to do was go with my journey to the beautiful metropolis. After finding myself inside a hospital with a number of tubes attached to my face, I began listening to voices and continued on with my journey to the lovely city. I turned back and observed my husband having a conversation with a guy wearing a suit and a white shirt inside an office quite a distance from where my body was. At the same time, I noticed around 25 people surrounding my body while simultaneously continuing to fly away from it. I began to hear a cutlery noise, but it turned out to be the sound of surgical tools, and I had the sensation that they were sounding inside of my sternum. I kept flying, and at the same time, I told my husband, "Tell him I don't have a thyroid, that I take fake hormones." The other guy inquired as to whether or not he is aware of the medications that I take, and he said that he did not recall. I instructed him to tell him XXX and the quantity of milligrams, and he did what I said. It is as though he cannot hear me. I raised my voice to try to get the man's attention, but he didn't pay any attention to what I had to say. I reached out to grab hold of my husband's hand, but my hand went right through his, and I said, "You may respond that I take XXX. At the same time, I continued to fly until he responded with the name of the medication, at which point the other guy wrote it down. At that same time, as I was flying toward the lovely city, which was getting closer at this point, a large coral brick with a light salmon hue fell in front of me. I circled it to go around it, and now I'm continuing on with my journey. As I got closer to the city, another brick fell diagonally, giving the impression that the block was impeding my progress toward the metropolis. It was done a total of 5 times, and each time the block was much larger, and the city was both more lovely and closer. Just as I was getting ready to travel into the huge metropolis, a loud voice, similar to the way it sounds when a large thunderstorm rolls in and booms loudly, startled me. My name is being spoken in a very authoritative manner and is being said really loudly. I became aware of a tremendous force that was drawing me back, similar to that of a large turbine. Just as I was turning around, I caught a glimpse of the moon and what seemed to be a large translucent entity in the shape of a jellyfish holding the moon over its head while simultaneously holding the planet Earth in between its feet. The persons who were previously in my immediate vicinity are no longer there. Instead, though, there were other persons bringing my corpse to a different room. I looked outside to see my spouse sitting alone and saw that he had tears in his eyes. He was a short distance from the location where they were transporting my corpse. There, they positioned me on a bed, and I was free from any tubes that had been placed in my throat. I blinked, and my first thought was, what the hell is going on? I was so calm, with a tremendous serenity inside of me, and I felt a great deal of security. Nevertheless, there was a nurse there, and she told me that I was unable to get up. When I looked across at my body being attended to by around 25 people while lying on the stretcher, he was one of the physicians who had come in response to her call. He addressed me with the question, "Madam, how are you feeling? Do you suffer from any pain?" I assured him, not at all, since the atmosphere was so calm. After that, he explained to me that I was unable to move because doctors had implanted a mesh and a stent in my heart, and that I was also unable to stand up since my femoral artery was clogged. The response I gave was, "Yes, I have seen it." In the intensive care unit, they administered a saline solution to me until the next day, when they assisted me in standing. On the 15th, at 3 in the afternoon, I was already at home, going about my daily routine, and I was pain-free in the chest. After 2 weeks, I had returned to my regular routine at work and continued to take my medication. After a year, I noticed that my sternum was beginning to give me some little pain. I want to stress the fact that throughout my journey to the lovely city, I looked back several times and saw my body in the vicinity. However, I had no qualms about departing from my body and carrying on with my journey to the beautiful city. I did not worry at all about leaving my body behind. While I was flying, I was experiencing a great deal of joy inside myself, and at the same time, I could feel the wind of the cold air while moving, as well as the intensity of the air. I experienced it in proportion to the velocity. The events that Valerie went through are now complete. As usual, I would appreciate hearing your feedback in the form of a remark below. However, do so in a respectable manner.